We continue now at the top of Daf Tesam and Aleph and Meseches Bava Metzia. This is Bava Metzia Daf 99a. The Gemara says, Biyad avdo chayiv. It said in the Mishnah that if the mashil, if the lender sends the animal in the hands of his slave, so then the shoal would be chayiv if the shoal asked the mashil to do so. And so the Gemara says, why should that be the case? Yad eved ki yad rabba. Why don't we say that the hand of the slave is like an extension of the hand of the master, and it's as if the master himself is bringing the animal over to the shoal? And we certainly would not say in any circumstance if the mashil brings the animal to the shoal, certainly the mashal is responsible until he gives it over to the shoal. So why should the eved be any different? Rashi explains, Biyad avdo chayiv b'tzmiyah. The Gemara is asking this as a question. He's chayiv when he sends it in the hands of his slave. Katani, because it says in the Mishnah, Amar le hashoel, if the shoel says to the mashil, Shalcha li biyad avdocha, send it to me in the hands of your slave, Shilchalo, and he does so, chayiv hashoel ba'onse b'derech. So then it said that the shoel is chayiv in any accidents that happen on the way. V'harei lo yotzos merashus mashil, but it never left the mashil at all. Diyad eved ki yad rabo damya, because the hand of the slave is like an extension of the hand of the master. V'harehu ki ilu holicha lahu. It's as if the mashal himself is bringing the animal to the shoel. So why would we say in that situation that the shoel is chayiv? And the Gemara continues, Amar Shmuel. Shmuel says, Be Eved Ivri. We're not talking here about an Eved Kanani. We're talking here about an Eved Ivri. We're talking about a Hebrew, a Jewish slave, the Lokani Legufe, where the owner does not actually own the body of the Eved, and so therefore we don't apply the rule of Yad Eved Ki Yad Rabo by Eved Ivri, and therefore it is no question at all. According to Shmuel, the Mishnah is not talking about Eved Kanani. Rav says, Afilu tema be'eved Kanani. You can even say that our Mishnah is talking about an Eved Kanani. So then we're back to our question. It should be considered Yad Eved Ki Yad Rabo, and certainly the lender should be responsible. And the Gemara answers to that, Nasa ka'omer lei, hikisha b'makel v'hitavo. It's like he said to him, hit it with a stick and it will come. Rashi explains, Nasa ka'omer hikisha b'makel v'hitavo acharai, meaning hit it with a stick and it will follow me. Hilkach misha yotzasa mechatzero shel bailam. The point over here is therefore when it leaves the courtyard of the owners, bein below shomer, bein al yedei shomer, whether there's somebody watching or not, amda b'rishus shoel, it is now in the rishus of the borrower, to shibed nafshe mishateitze mirashuso, because what he essentially said was, he is obligating himself from the moment the animal leaves the rishus of the mashil, v'arehi kisha b'makel adasher yatzasami beso. Essentially, what the mashil did, or the equivalent of what he's doing, is he's hitting it with a stick and it's leaving his property, and the moment it leaves his property, the shoel is taking responsibility, meaning when he's sending it with his eved, it's as if that's what was stated, that the moment it leaves your property, I'm going to take responsibility, and therefore the shoel is responsible. And the Gemara continues, Mesechet, we have a question from the following Brisa, Hashoel hapara, somebody borrows a cow, v'shilchalo biyad beno biyad shlucho chayiv. If he sends it to him in the hands of his son or his shliach, then the shoel is chayiv, the shoel is responsible. Clearly we're talking about a case where the shoel asked for it to be sent in that fashion, but then the Brisa says, biyad avdo pater, but if he sends it in the hands of his slave, he is going to be pater, the shoel is going to be pater. And so the question is, why are we suddenly in this Brisa making a distinction and saying that by eved we say the shoel is pater? And the Gemara explains, B'shalom l'Shmuel. Now I understand according to Shmuel, who makes a distinction between an Eved Ivri and an Eved Kanani. Shmuel said that our Mishnah is talking about an Eved Ivri. So Masnisin be'Eved Ivri, Brisa be'Eved Kanani. You simply say that our Mishnah is talking about an Eved Ivri, but the Brisa is talking about an Eved Kanani, meaning in this Brisa over here, even though the shoel asked for it to be sent in that fashion, nevertheless, if he sends it with an Eved Kanani, Yad Eved Ki Yad Rabo, it's like the master himself, it's like the mashal himself is bringing the animal, and certainly the shoel will not be responsible, and that's why the Brisa says pater. Ela l'Rav kasha, but according to Rav, it's difficult because here in the Brisa it's saying that if he sends it in the hands of the slave, we're going to say pater. In the Mishnah, if he sent it in the hand of the slave, we're going to say the shoel is chayiv. And Rav never made a distinction between two different cases. Rav just said that even when it's sent in the hands of an Eved Kanani, it's as if he said he kisha b'makel v'hitavo, and really the shoel should be responsible. So why does this Brisa say that the shoel is not responsible? And the Gemara answers, Amar lach Rav. Rav will say to you, Lo teima nasa ka'amar lei. Don't say that what we meant to say in that answer, we weren't saying that sending it with an Eved Kanani is as if the shoel is saying, hit it with a stick and it will come to me and I'll be responsible. That's not what we were saying at all. Ela ema, rather say, Ba'amar le, hikisha b'makel v'hitavo. The case in the Mishnah is where he says, hit it with a stick and it will come to me, meaning if the shoel actually says those words, then the shoel is taking responsibility. That's the case in our Mishnah. But since those words were not said in the case of the Brisa, the shoel is not responsible because, again, it's an Eved Kanani, and we say, Yad Eved Ki Yad Rabo. And Rashi explains, and this is going on the Bryce of Ashilcha lo biad, but no, he sends it to him with his son, Shal Mashal, meaning he sends it with the son of the lender, Shalcha Mashal Ashol, that's how the lender sends it to the Shoel. So then we say, Chayiv Ashol, we say the borrower is Chayiv. Ukagon Shamar le Shalach li biad bincha, like we said, the case of the Bryce has to be where the Shoel actually said that you should send it to me in the hands of your son, so essentially the Shoel is taking responsibility, but nevertheless, biad avdo pater, nevertheless, if he sends it in the hands of his slave, the Shoel is pater. Ve'afilu amar Shilcha li biad avdecha, even if he says, sends it to me in the hand of your slave, still we're going to say the Shoel is pater, presumably because Yad Eved ki Yad Rabo. And Rashi continues, Lo tema, don't say what we said above is the answer for Rav. Don't say Kedetirtza Rav Nasika Omerlo, that when he sends it with his Eved, it's as if he said Hikisha b'makil. Ela Rav Mukila l'masnis, and rather what Rav is saying is that the Mishnah is talking about a case where, in the situation of the Mishnah, the case is B'amrle Hikisha b'makil v'yitavo acharai, where the Shoel said, hit it with a stick and it will follow me. The Shibed Nafshe Mechi Nafka Mechatzera. What really happened was the Shoel took responsibility from the moment that it leaves the courtyard of the Mashil. Umishum the Shalach Avdo Ima, just because the Mashal sent his slave along with it, Lo Mifter, that's not a reason for the Shoel to be pater, because in the case of the Mishnah, the Shoel explicitly took responsibility. That's not the case in the Brisa, and that's why in the case of the Brisa, the Shoel is pater. And the Gemara continues, the Itmar, as it was stated, Hashileni Parascha, let's say a person says, lend me your cow, the borrower says that, V'yamar le biyad mi, and the Mashal says, who should I send it with? V'yamar le, and the borrower says to the lender, Hikisha b'makil v'tavo, just hit it with a stick and it will come after me. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rabba Baravu, Amar Rav, Rav Nachman says that Rabba Baravu says that Rav says, Kevon sheyotzas merishus Mashal, once it leaves the rishus of the lender, v'meis it dies, Chayev, the Shoel is Chayev, he's taking responsibility from the moment that it leaves the rishus of the Mashal. So we see Rav is saying this idea of Hikisha b'makil v'hitavo, that the Shoel takes responsibility. And the Gemara continues, name a Mesayale. Let's say the following Brisa is a support for what Rav says. The Brisa says, Hashileni parascha, if the borrower says to the lender, lend me your cow, V'yamar le, and the lender says to him, biyad mi, who should I send it with? V'yamar le, and the Shoel says back, Hikisha b'makil v'hitavo, hit it with a stick and it will come after me. Kevon sheyotzas merishus mashal v'meisa chayiv, once it leaves the rishus of the lender and it dies, so then the Shoel is chayiv, the Shoel is obligated, the Shoel is liable, seems to be exactly what Rav said. And the Gemara says not necessarily a proof. Amar Rav Ashi says, Hacha b'mayaskin, and here in this brisa we could be dealing with the following scenario. Kegon shahaisa chatzera shel shoel lifnim mechatzera shel mashal. The case could be that the courtyard of the borrower is actually within, it's inside of the chatzer of the lender. In such a situation, essentially the lender is not sending the animal through the rishus haravim. He's not sending it through the public thoroughfare. So there, when the lender sends it, it is certainly going to the courtyard of the Shoel. And so maybe that, specifically in that particular situation, the Brisa says the Shoel is taking responsibility, but it would not necessarily apply. Let's say the Shoel said the same thing, and the Mashal sent it through the Rishus Haravim. But the Gemara says, Yachi, if so, my lamemer. So what do you even need to say that for? It's so obvious that the Shoel is going to be responsible. In that case, why would the Brisa need to teach that case? And the Gemara says, Lo, no, tzrich, it is necessary. Dika gazaisa, because there are corners where the animal could, so to speak, escape into the corners. Ma'u the tema, what might you have said? Lo sam chadaita. He's not really relying on the fact it's not clear it's going to get to the Shoel. Dil makai mahasam velo asya. Maybe it's going to stand over there and not come azla lahedya. It's not going to come explicitly into the property of the Shoel. Kamash malon. So that's what the Brisa might be teaching us. The sam chadaita, that the Shoel is relying. They're relying on the fact that it will get to the Shoel, and the Shoel is taking full responsibility. And Rashi explains, Lifnim mechatzer shel mashal, the borrower's courtyard is inside the courtyard of the lender, means to say, shechatzer shel mashal psuchel rishus harabim. The case over here is that the courtyard of the lender opens up into rishus harabim, the chatzer hashoel lifnim mimenu, but the chatzer of the borrower is inside, so to speak. It doesn't open up to rishus harabim, it just opens up to the lender's chatzer. Psuchel lechatzer shel mashal, it opens up into the chatzer of the lender. She'ein nechnasen v'yotzen lechatzer shel shoel eladerech chatzer shel mashal. What it essentially means is nobody can get to the courtyard of the borrower without going through the courtyard of the lender. The hasam sam chadaita the shol. So over there already, the borrower is certain of the fact that the animal will get to him. When the animal stand in front of the animal and guide it in the direction of the shoel's property, and hit it with a stick, it's certainly going to run into the courtyard of the shoel. Maybe it's only in that situation that the shoel is obligating himself. But maybe, let's say it needed to go through Rishus Haravim to get to the Shoel. Really, I could say to you, even if he said, send it, hit it with a stick and it'll come after me, maybe the Shoel is not really relying on that. That the Mashal mashal is just going to let it be ownerless without anybody watching over it. So maybe in that situation, he's not obligating himself until he actually receives the animal. That's why the bris is not necessarily a proof to what Rav said. The iko gazaisa, and why is it even a chiddush then, if that's what the bris is saying? Because there are corners. Sheyesh b'chatzar mashal zavius v'uksin. There are these corners sheyechola loser sham u'lishamet be'mechave, where the animal can hide, and therefore maybe it's not so obvious that the shoel accepts responsibility immediately. That's the chiddush of the brisa. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Huna says, Hashoel kardo mechaveru, if somebody borrows an axe from his friend, baka bo kano, if he chops with it, so then he acquires it. Lo baka bo lo kano, but if he doesn't chop with it, he has not yet acquired it, meaning the borrower has not yet acquired it. And the Gemara says, Lamai, what exactly is Rav Huna talking about in terms of this acquisition? Ilema la'onsen, if you're going to say in terms of being responsible for accidents, that he's not responsible for accidents until he actually chops with the axe, that doesn't make sense. Ma'ishna parad mishas she'ela, what's the difference by the cow? From the moment of the actual borrowing, he's responsible for accidents, and so therefore that should be true by an axe as well. The moment he takes it, he should be responsible for accidents. It shouldn't be only when he starts to chop with it. And so the Gemara says, El l'chazara, rather what Rav Huna was talking about was for the purpose of retraction. It means to say as follows, Baka bo, once he chops with it, lo matzi hadar be mashal, the lender is not able to retract. He can't say, forget it, I don't want to lend it to you. But lo baka bo, but as long as he hasn't used it to chop with, matzi mashal hadar be, the lender is still able to retract and say, forget it, I don't want to lend you this axe. And the Gemara continues, Upliga de Rabbi Yami. Now this statement of Rav Huna argues on Rabbi Yami, because essentially Rav Huna is saying that there is no Meshicha by Shomrim. There's no concept of a kinyan, of pulling it, making a kinyan Meshicha by Shomrim. But Rabbi Yami disagrees. Rabbi Yami is going to say that there is a concept of Meshicha by Shomrim. Diyamar Rabbi Yami, because Rabbi Yami says, Hamashal kardam shel hektish. Let's say a person lends an axe that belongs to hektish, so this is essentially talking about lending it by mistake, not really realizing that it's hektish, it's an issue of me'ila. So mo'al lefitovas hanashabo. So he has committed me'ila according to the benefit that he is getting. He gets a certain benefit because now he has done a favor for this person. So according to that value of that benefit, that is the me'ila. And his friend, the person who he lent it to, is allowed to chop with it lechatchila because now it's essentially left the reshus of hektish. And so the Gemara says, v'ilo kana. Now, if the person has not acquired it through just the act of lending, amai mo'al, why was there me'ila here? V'amai chavero mutar levakeh bo lechatchila. And why is his friend allowed to chop with it lechatchila? Why can he chop with it, even though, again, it seems to still belong to hektish? Nahadra, he should actually have to return it. V'lo liknei v'lo limo, let there be no kinyan and let there be no me'ila, but it must be that there was a kinyan the moment he took it. It doesn't go by the chopping, according to Rabbi Yami, it goes by the moment that he took it. And furthermore, the Gemara says, Upligad Rebbe Lazar, what Rav Huna said also argues with Rebbe Lazar, Dam Rebbe Lazar, because Rebbe Lazar says explicitly, Kederech shetiknu mashicha belekuchos, kach tiknu mashicha b'shomrim. Just like there's a concept of mashicha by purchasers, by buyers, so too there's a concept of mashicha by shomrim. And the Gemara continues, Tanya nami hachi, we learned the brisa like this as well, Kashem shetiknu mashicha belekuchos, kach tiknu mashicha b'shomrim. Just like there's a concept of mashicha by buyers, so too there's a concept of mashicha by watchmen, uchashem, and just like, and Rashi explains, first we said baka bo kano, that's Rav Huna talking, that if he chopped with it, then there's a kinyan at sheyichlu yimei sheila, so until the end of the terms of the borrowing, he has it. Lo baka bo lo kano, but according to Rav Huna, if he hasn't chopped with it, there's no kinyan, dekasavar ein mashicha kona b'shomrim, because Rav Huna holds mashicha is not a kinyan by shomrim. But then we had the opinion of Rabbi Ami that the moment it's given over to the borrower, that's me'ila. Mo'al hamashil l'shalim l'hektish karen shenena b'hashalaso. The mashil now has to pay hektish the principal amount of benefit that he got by lending it out. So now what benefit did he get? L'fi tovas hanashabo. It's called tovas hana. Omdimbo. We evaluate kama hu rotza lios nechser mishalo lahachzik lo ashol tovas hanazu. Tovas hanakazu. How much would a person be willing to lose that now the shoel owes him this favor back because he's doing a favor for the borrower? That's the concept of tovas hana, and that's how much me'ila there is. And Rashi continues that Rabbi Yami said, "V'chavero mutar levakeh bo lechatchila." The friend, the person who's borrowing it, he can chop with it lechatchila. Afilu yodel achar shabal yodu. Even if he finds out, he knows after it comes to his hand, shehu shel hektish, that it is hektish, he can still use it. Shemikevan sheshagag bo hamashal, because once the lender made this mistake and ended up using it for purposes not of hektish, v'nischayiv d'mei tovas hana lehektish, and now he's chayiv to pay the value of the tovas hana to hektish. Yotzas hanayasa lechulin. That benefit now goes to chulin, and that's why why he's allowed to use it. And so the Gemara says, V'lo kano, now if there was no kinyan b'meshicha, if there was no kinyan just taking the axe, amay mo'al hamashal ad sheyavaka b'ashol, why is there me'ilah? It shouldn't be me'ilah until the shoel actually chops with it, so clearly the meshicha is a kinyan. Upliga nami de Rav Huna ad Rav Elazar, and furthermore, Rav Huna argues on Rav Elazar, because Rav Elazar says explicitly there's a concept of meshicha by shomrim, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Tes Amud Beis.